Gary, Marty and me, my story of living with a double brain tumour diagnosis and how humour and positivity helped me to cope. Episode 3. December 2021. Our first Christmas together. Christmas past. Everyone's memories of Christmas Day when they were young differ, and of course it's difficult to know if time has altered your memories of the actual events. I can, however, clearly remember how from around 1970 our Christmas Day settled into a rigid routine. Honestly, for most of my life, our Christmas Day was like the movie Groundhog Day. It just repeated every year. My sisters and I would of course wake early on Christmas morning and be buzzing with excitement, but we had to learn self-control, as all we were allowed to do when we got up was to sort our presents into our respective piles until our dad had finished what he referred to as his ablutions and gotten dressed. Christmas for us could only really start when he finally wandered down, by which point of course we were bouncing off the walls. Once we were told we could start, there followed a frenzy of unwrapping with piles of torn wrapping paper thrown everywhere, accompanied by lots of excited thank yous. Back in the late 1960s and early 1970s, Mum and Dad didn't earn a great deal, but they would always try to get us what we wanted, even if it meant them going without, something that I only came to realise in recent years, and as hard as my dad could be to live with, I know that he loved us, and I'm grateful for what I had. It has become a habit for people to say, oh, kids have more fun with the packaging than the toy. Well, maybe that is true of some kids, but I can tell you that this is not the case when you've just unwrapped a 10-inch toy Thunderbird 2. Once the chaos of present unwrapping had subsided, Dad would head off to collect our Nan, while Mum would begin cooking the Christmas dinner. She never told us at the time, but I'm pretty sure this wasn't the highlight of her day. Dad would arrive home with his mum and settle her in front of our TV, which is where she would stay for the whole day apart from when eating dinner. Then would begin the sherry ritual. This was an annual argument over what she wanted to drink, and went as follows. Dad: Mum, would you like a sherry? Nan: yes please. Dad: well, we've got gin and tonic as well. Nan: oh well, that would be nice too. Dad: well, so which do you want? Nan: either. Oh, for God's sake, make up your mind. Sherry. It always ended with sherry, but still this ritual took place every time. As soon as Nan was finally settled with her bloody sherry, Dad would take this as his cue to head off to the railway pub in Countersthorpe, conveniently about 200 feet from our first home in the village, to join his mates, all of who had left at home their long-suffering wives, stuck with unwelcome relatives, uncooked turkeys and unhelpful children. Dad would eventually arrive home, shall we say, relaxed out of his face for Christmas dinner. This had to be served at 14:15 as the pub closed at 1400, and even Christmas dinner was not allowed to cut into pub time. I can't honestly remember how many pints of beer Dad would get through on Christmas Day, but you could definitely describe him as mellow when he got back. This usually ensured that dinner would go smoothly, apart from the year that he managed to knock a full glass of red wine over my Christmas dinner, and we had to salvage one for me by everyone else donating parts of theirs. Full of beer and turkey, Dad would retire to his favourite chair and be asleep by the time that the opening credits of the Christmas Day Bond movie ended. As I am writing about the time before VCRs and DVDs, it was years before I was able to watch a James Bond movie without the accompaniment of a constant and definitely loud pig snort. By the time Dad woke, thirsty and hungry again, it was time for Mum, who had to remain sober until one of his kids learnt to drive, to take my Nan home. When Mum was back, we would all settle down to watch whatever Christmas special the BBC was showing, usually Morecambe and Wise, and this was the most time that our family would usually spend together, and this is probably only because the pub was closed, so Dad had to stay at home. And there you have it, year after year the same, yet I still have good memories of Christmas. Kids can filter out the memories that they don't like, I guess. Christmas present. For my tumours and I, 2021 was our first official Christmas together. And it would appear that Marty my meningioma and Gary my glioma decided that they should celebrate this by giving me some gifts to go with the ones that they first gave me, and which led to their discovery in the first place. The first of these gifts was a gently worsening fatigue in my right arm and leg. I had been using my running as my way of keeping my fitness up for my surgery, but even though I had managed to run 5k park runs on both Christmas morning and New Year's Day morning, I was finding the effort increasingly difficult. I was also starting to lose sensation in other places now, most notably on the back of my head and on the fingertips of my left hand, which were significant changes. The tips of my fingers on the left hand felt as if they were frostbitten, and my feet and hands on both sides of my body were colder than the rest of me. Developing these new symptoms finally triggered a sense of anxiety in me, which was really annoying as I'd managed to stay upbeat and calm until now. When I was laying in bed at night, trying to clear my mind for sleep, they became more noticeable, and my thoughts ended up focusing on the evident fact that my illness was both progressive and progressing. Somehow, up until that point, I'd been able to avoid facing that fact. The sensitivity issue has, however, provided me with one of the funniest moments of recent months that I'm sure I will chuckle about for a long time. I was discussing with my wife Andrea the fact that I have almost completely lost feeling in another, and to a man rather important part of my anatomy, and I referred to it as my old chap. A few days later, and my wife and I are sitting with Ryan Matthew, the neurosurgeon that will carry out my operation on Gary the glioma. And after discussing my various symptoms, he summarised and then asked me if I had any other symptoms that we'd not yet talked about. So I responded, well, no, I don't think so. And my wife said, well, what about your old chap? Mr. Matthew gave us a blank expression, and I just said, Andrea, of course, started to gently turn red in the face. At this point, under the pressure of the moment, my mind blanked on the word genitals, and I raced through a list of ultimately worse alternatives, including man parts, wedding tackle, meat and two veg, and the last turkey in the shop, before finally blurting out, down below. Mr. Matthew paused for a second and then went, OK, and wrote something down. Please let it be true that this senior neurosurgeon and professor wrote down the words, old chap. I got my operation date for Marty the meningioma very soon after that meeting, for an operation in January 2022, and that really helped with my anxiety. I had to face the fact that although surgery and treatment can reduce both Marty and Gary, it could never completely get rid of Gary. Incidentally, my neurosurgeon Mr. Shake was able to get rid of all of Marty. So as far as Gary's concerned, we will be spending every Christmas that I have left together, and if I live long enough, Gary will get me in the end. However, if I can manage 15 to 20 more years, then I'll have done well, and if Gary is not due to get me in that time scale, then as a man, it's quite probable that something else will take me out anyway, based on the law of averages. So I'm not going to worry too much about prognosis and timescales, so long as when the pathology takes a look at Gary, he turns out to be low grade and slow glowing as expected. Thanks very much for listening. Hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye. By the way, like me, over 12,000 people each year in the UK and an estimated 300,000 worldwide suddenly discover that they have a brain tumour, and from the moment that they receive that news, their lives will never be the same again. This podcast has been created to try and raise funds for the Brain Tumour Charity, who've been a big support to my family and I. As well as offering support to individuals and families, they fund life-saving research in the hope of ending the harm done by brain tumours. If you can help in any way, big or small, please go to www.justgiving.com/fundraising/Stuart-Hannah. That's STUART-HANNAH and make a donation. Thanks.